Hello, world and universe. Welcome to the Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth. And if you're new to the channel, please hit that like and subscribe button. And for those of you who have been following me, I want to say thank you. And I have a story for you that started off in a very great and fantastic way with a family and their YouTube channel when they had almost 2 million subscribers at one time, and then a negative curve took place in their family dynamics, and they went from YouTube influencers to jailbirds. And this is a very unfortunate story that has to deal with a little bit of quite a bit of child abuse, and how these two influencers turned something that was good into something bad. So here we go. Parenting YouTuber Ruby Franke and her business partner Jody Hildebrandt, who pleaded guilty to child abuse charges that stem from one of Franke's children escaping Hildebrandt's house in August to beg a neighbor for help, have been sentenced. Both Franke and Hildebrandt, two women, have been sentenced to prison. Each could serve as much as 30 years, the prosecutor said after the hearing, the most severe penalty available under Utah law. Franke has been sentenced to 4 consecutive prison terms, CBS News affiliate KUTV reported Tuesday, which could range from 1 to 15 years each. The Utah Board of Pardons and Parole will determine prison time, KUTV reported. Franke has 30 days to appeal the decision. Hildebrandt, the other lady, received the same sentence of 4 consecutive prison terms, KUTV reported, which could again range from 1 to 15 years each. Like Franke, Hildebrandt's prison time will be determined by the Utah Board of Pardons and Parole. So what is their backstory? Franke, who gave parenting advice on her now defunct 8 Passengers YouTube channel, which had up to 2 million subscribers at one point, and Hildebrandt, who operated a counseling business called Connections Classroom, were each initially charged with 6 counts of aggravated child abuse, a second-degree felony. Each count carried a potential penalty of 1 to 15 years in prison and a fine of up to $10,000. While reading the sentencing recommendation, State Prosecutor Eric Clark compared the environment Franke's children faced to a concentration camp-like setting. Now, this young lady, Miss Ruby Franke, she had a blog, a YouTube channel on parenting, and it blew up. It went viral, 2 million subscribers. Mind you, she is abusing her children behind the scenes. You talk about a dichotomy and a hypocrisy at its fullest extent. They said that Franke, committed horrible acts of child abuse. While addressing Hildebrandt's charges, Clark called her a significant threat to the community. Hildebrandt. Both women addressed the court before their sentencings, with Hildebrandt saying that she would submit to what the state feels is an appropriate amount of time served. Franke admitted that she and Hildebrandt had inflicted the injuries on her children. So they inflicted these injuries on Franke's children. I don't know if Hildebrandt had children or not. Doesn't sound like it. She said that she had been led to believe that this world is an evil place, and that Hildebrandt had never been her business responsibility, but that she had paid the other woman to be her mentor. Hildebrandt was supposed to be Franke's mentor. Franke also thanked public safety officials who rescued her children, calling them angels, according to KUTV. My charges are just, Ms. Franke said. They offer safety to my family and accountability to the public. So what did Franke and Jody Hildebrandt do? Here we go. In December, Franke pleaded guilty to 4 counts of child abuse and admitted that she tortured her children, including a now 12-year-old boy who escaped Hildebrandt's home. In the plea agreement, which contained graphic details of abuse, Franke said her son was often kept bound and that her 9-year-old daughter was made to do manual labor outside in the hot sun with no water or shoes. Both children were often told they were possessed, and that their punishments were necessary to help them. The boy told officials that Hildebrandt had tied him up and used home remedies to treat wounds caused by the restraints, according to the court documents. As part of her plea deal, Franke agreed to serve a prison term and agreed her sentences would run consecutively. She also agreed to testify against Hildebrandt. So they're not running concurrent. So she pled guilty to 4. She can do 5 years for one, another 5 years, another 5 years, another 5 years, 10 years, 10 years, 10 years. They're not running together. Hildebrandt also pleaded guilty, just days after Franke, to 4 counts of child abuse. Her plea agreement stated that she either tortured the children or was aware of the abuse. The agreement also stated that Hildebrandt either physically forced or coerced Franke's daughter to jump into a cactus multiple times. Man, you talk about mental illness at its finest. And I do these videos and I talk about the 5 or 6 pillars that are very fragile in today's society. And mental illness is number 1. The opioid crisis, homelessness, joblessness, inept inner city public schools, gun violence. We have some real stressing issues that are taking place, and mental illness is at the top of the paradigm. The crimes were motivated by their religious faith, said Washington County Attorney Eric Clark in a statement. This is a case about religious extremism. The defendants appeared to have fully believed that the abuse they inflicted was necessary to teach the children how to properly repent for imagined sins and to cast the evil spirits out of their bodies, Clark said. Hildebrandt regularly stated that God communicated directly with her and gave her directions. Franke accepted Hildebrandt as her leader and followed her instructions and guidance. Where is Ruby Franke's family now? Even before the criminal charges, Franke was criticized on YouTube for her harsh punishments towards her children, including once banning one of her children from his bedroom for 7 months because he pranked his younger brother. The YouTube channel, which began in 2015, ended after 7 years. And like I said, she had up to 2 million subscribers with her and her husband. Here he goes with her husband. Franke's husband, Kevin Franke, has filed for divorce. In early September, a lawyer for Kevin Franke told CBS News that he was representing his client's interest in keeping his children together and in his care, and that he could not comment on his ex-wife, Ruby Franke's arrest. Kevin Franke appeared in court Friday alongside Franke's 2 eldest children. While speaking from the stand, Franke apologized to her former husband. "You are the love of my life," she said, according to KUTV. "The ending of our marriage is a tragedy." Franke's parents and brother both filed statements with the court ahead of her sentencing on Tuesday, yesterday, blaming Hildebrandt's influence for her actions. Franke's brother, Bo Griffiths, said that he had also been enrolled in Hildebrandt's Connections program. At the continued encouragement of Mrs. Hildebrandt, Ruby systematically pushed those around her away. First myself, and then our sister's parents and close friends, and then her husband, and finally her own children, her brother Griffith said in part. Ruby has clearly been brainwashed. She has been taken advantage of by Mrs. Hildebrandt. Franke's sister, Julian Griffiths, Dura and Bonnie Hollying, YouTubers themselves, shared videos detailing Franke's separation from the family and stating that they were not aware of her actions. Franke's parents, Chad and Jennifer Griffin, said in their statements to the court that for 3 years they had only had brief communications with their daughter, where she accused them of either things that had never happened or she grossly exaggerated the events that did. She was delusional, they said. This is Franke's mother and father. She was so deeply brainwashed, we could not recognize her. And this was in the state of Utah. And there are several kinds of religious organizations. There's been pros and cons about Scientology and brainwashing techniques. I lived in Chehalis, Washington, and Seattle for about 2 years, a few years back, and there was an organization called Ramtha, where this lady that goes by Jay-Z said that she was from the 1400s, or she used to be a man and a part of a ram. You got to look up Ramtha, but it was a very weird and bizarre organization, in my opinion, and I knew several people that had belonged to it. And of course, they want you to pay tons of money for fees and courses with this Ramtha organization. And what I've noticed, and they had all kind of brainwashing techniques and mental stimulation and all those kinds of things. But I noticed on the West Coast, for some reason, and at Northwest and definitely California, there are tons of organizations and religious ideologies that can temper on the verge of being a little bit cuckoo. You don't see that so much in the Midwest and the South and in the East Coast. There's a few on the East Coast, but it's definitely is predominantly in the West Coast, in my opinion. And for those who travel, give me your thoughts on that. And so for her being from Utah and this Hildebrandt woman with this connection class organization and brainwashing this particular woman, Franke, is very interesting. It tells you the fragility of individuals that are always seeking external stimuli to gain and garner support and a rewarding effort for their physical existence versus having it come from within and their spiritual connection with God or whatever spiritual being, or whether you're agnostic or atheist. But you're not going to find your chasm or your axiom for existence through another human being. I think no matter what religion you profess to be following one human being, your pathway to God is not through another human being, whether it's as a Muslim, Christian, a Jew, or what have you, Hindu. But you do find these particular sects, cults, that they have this so-called leader that brainwashes these individuals to garner followers, and your way to the gates of heaven or wherever is through this person. And this is what this Hildebrandt lady, I guess she had excellent techniques for brainwashing. Remember what Charlie Manson was accused of back in the, I guess it was 60s or 70s, with the Manson family. A little bitty guy who was able to brainwash several people to commit crimes. So this has been going on for a very long time. It is nice, and it is thankful that the authorities were able to track down and save Miss Ruby Franke's children. Doesn't look like Miss Hildebrandt had any children, and to save them from this child abuse, because it could have turned into something even far worse. These kids are definitely suffering from some form of PTSD for this going on as long as it has. And psychological counseling and therapy is definitely going to be needed for these children. And I don't know exactly what the dynamics of Ruby's ex-husband was in that narrative. It sounds like she isolated herself and her children from everyone, and was putting all her faith on this Hildebrandt woman. And here again, we cannot worship human beings as deities or as godlike, and all of us are just as flawed as the next person. Whether you're an entertainer, athlete, a well-spoken individual, a popular person, they're still just human beings, and we're all flawed. And for her to listen and follow this young lady who doesn't sound like she even had children, and I'm not sure, and listening to Miss Hildebrandt on telling her what to do with her kids is ludicrous and makes not an ounce of sense. And it seems as if Miss Hildebrandt was being diabolical once she realized that she had this spell on Ruby Franke, who gave up a very promising YouTube family-oriented career and channel with over 2 million subscribers. And now she's looking at up to 60 years in a Utah prison. Along with Mrs. Hildebrandt, she's looking at the same kind of time. They both pleaded guilty to these abuse cases. Mental illness is real. Our children are our future, and we need to save them by any means necessary. I tell people all the time, you don't get to ask God what family you are born into. It's just bestowed upon you. And love is an action and a verb. So somebody has to show you that they love you, not just tell you. And then you can receive it, digest it, and decide to give love back. But just because somebody is your mother, your father, your uncle, your brother, your sister, does not mean you have to love them if they don't display and initiate love to you. You can close that door. It is okay. You don't have to love them because they're called your so-called family. And in many of these stories we're seeing where family members are just as destructive to other family members as strangers are to individuals. It doesn't make a difference. That there's a fine line between life and death, and there's a fine line between loyalty and love with family members and or friends or strangers. So I've shown you several videos. There was a guy in Joliet, Illinois, 21 years old. He killed 7 of his family members. I've done several videos where family members, the chaos and disruption that's taking place inside the home sometimes is worse than what's going on outside in the community. So let's be loving. Tell me what you think about this story on Ruby Franke and Miss Jody Hildebrandt. They had a top-notch YouTube channel, over 2 million subscribers, talking about family dynamics and raising children. And then you come to find out that the dichotomy and the hypocrisy was that these 2 young ladies were abusing Miss Ruby Franke's children in some of the most worst and grotesque and concentration camp-like ways. Let's make this world a better place. This has been the Trevor Donald Experience. Manifest your truth in a positive, righteous, and God-fearing way.